Hello, 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 and welcome everyone. We're really excited to be with you today on a really important topic, how a coach can help me finally shut down imposter syndrome. I am really interested in where you're coming to us from today. So please do type in the chat, let us know you're here and let us know where in the world you are based. I'm Jenny Garrett, and welcome to the second in our series, How a Coach Can Help. If you caught our first one on overwhelm, thank you for returning. A quick bit about me. I've been coaching for over 20 years. I run my own leadership consultancy, and we work around three areas: inclusive leadership, entrepreneurial leadership, and AI-ready leadership. Because whether we like it or not, that's where the world is heading, and leaders need to be prepared. I'm also the founder of the Diverse Executive Coach Directory, which is where our three brilliant guests today come from. I set it up to solve a problem. I kept seeing organizations wanting to work with diverse coaches, but not knowing where to find them. So we created the directory to increase visibility for talented coaches, experienced coaches, and highly qualified coaches from global majority, or you might use the language ethnic minority backgrounds. My latest book, Equality versus Equity, recently won an award. It tackles issues of race in the workplace. So before we dive in, I want to say a huge thank you on behalf of Rocking Your Teens, the social enterprise we're supporting today. Every donation goes towards building resilience and raising aspirations in teenagers. We actually have a conference coming up in March where we'll be supporting some teen girls to increase their aspirations and inspire them. If you want to know more, head to rockingyourteens.com. My colleague Tanya will add the link in the chat. So now let's talk about today's topic, imposter syndrome. Here's a question. Have you ever sat in a meeting absolutely convinced that everyone's about to realize that you don't really belong there, that you don't know what you're talking about, and somehow you've managed to get in the room and you're hoping that they won't find out? You're not alone. Research shows 3 in 5 UK employees experience imposter syndrome. And for women, it's even higher, 70% at some point in their careers. And here's the most frustrating part: 94% of us never talk about it at work. So that's why we are here today, to talk about it. And more importantly, explore how coaching can actually help you shut it down. I'm delighted to have 3 coaches with us who all bring something different to this conversation. They're all from the Diverse Executive Coach Directory, and Tanya's popping those links in the chat now so you can make sure that you connect with them, find out more about them, and maybe even have a chemistry session to get to know them better and see if they're the right coach for you. Today's format is pretty straightforward. Our 3 coaches, Aishwarya, Sadia, and Tara, will introduce themselves briefly. Then I'll ask them each a question, and then a broader question for all 3 of them. And then we'll open it up to you for your questions. We'll be keeping an eye on the chat throughout, so do share your thoughts as we go, your thoughts, your insights, your questions. We're really happy to hear from you. So right, let's meet them. I've been talking long enough. Maria, let's start with you. Please tell us a bit about yourself and your work.
Hi everyone, thank you very much, Jenny. It's very good to have you all here. My name is Aishwarya, as Jenny said, or Aishu, and I'm a former architect and pastry chef who now almost exclusively coaches women working in majority male industries with building the confidence to take their careers and businesses to the next level. I think I'll hand the mic back now.
Oh, wonderful. Love how you kept that nice, short and sweet. So we'll get to know you even more as the session goes on. Sadia.
Thanks, Jenny. So lovely to be here again. I'm Sadia Salam. I'm an executive coach and a recovering lawyer. I'm Welsh and Bangladeshi heritage. And my journey into coaching started when I was a lawyer, did it for over 20 years, and I needed a coach. And on that journey of qualifying as a coach, I realized how valuable it was and how much it helped me in my career. I didn't know what a coach was before. And now I solely, in 2018, I set up my business, and now I solely coach senior women of colour, especially from South Asian heritage, on how to get to the top in their organisations, whatever the top is for them, and how actually to stay there. and lead in a way that works brilliantly for them, but also their organisations. And imposter syndrome is that topic that comes up each and every time. So I'm really happy that we get to chat about it more today.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'd love you to introduce yourself, Tara. Can I ask, when we're not speaking, if we just mute ourselves, because I can just hear little bits of background noise. Thank you. Tara, over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. So I am a confidence coach, and my background is as a Black West Indian background woman. I have worked in education for decades. I went into a positive psychology master's and coaching master's in order to do some research on exploring the experiences of Black teachers in London and how to increase their confidence in an area that is called mattering. So a lot of my work is around the psychology construct of mattering and improving a performance quality within my clients' work so they feel they can show up, flourish and thrive.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So you can see we've got a wide range of knowledge, experience and expertise here that we can all learn from. Thank you both, all three of you very, very much. So I want to say hello as well to Naomi, who's joining us from Warwickshire, to Jay, great to see you, and also Janice, who's joining us from Brighton. And of course, everyone else is here, but if you haven't written in the chat, I don't know who's here. So if you do want to shout out, you'll have to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go to our first question. And my first question is to Sadia. Now, Sadia, you spent 20 years as a corporate lawyer before becoming a coach. So you've lived this from the inside. And you've also written about the internal negative voice and feeling of being stuck. When someone comes to you and says, I think I've got imposter syndrome, what are the patterns you typically see? What does it actually look like in practice beyond just, I don't feel good enough?
Thank you, Jenny. It comes up a lot. And there's one thing when we talk about imposter syndrome, the way I see imposter syndrome is that negative inner voice that many of us have on steroids. So it's the inner critic on steroids. That's how I see imposter syndrome. And the patterns I see when I talk to my amazing clients when they come to me is the main pattern is they've done the external work. So their careers look amazing on paper and they look amazing to everybody else, but that's very different to what's going on in the inside. And so what I often see is a pattern. They've done all the external work to get them to their positions or wherever they are, but they haven't had the tools, the space or the time to do any of the internal work because we're not taught about that. So that's the first thing I notice. And then how do I see with my clients, how do I see imposter syndrome showing up? I see it showing up in 4 ways. So the first thing I see is this massive stop sign that's gone up in their lives. It's a stop sign that stops them doing what they really want to do. So going for that promotion, getting the sponsor that they really know they need, not speaking up in meetings, not doing public speaking work, which they know they could do a year ago, but suddenly they just can't do it anymore. Asking for what they need is a big one. And also being brave enough to have those uncomfortable conversations with your managers, with members of your team. The uncomfortable things. I see a big stop sign going up with people can't do it. And also the stop sign goes up and it stops people leaving their comfort zone. So we get so attached to what our comfort zones that we don't want to go for a new job. We don't even want to look into a new job, new roles, making any changes whatsoever. And we find ourselves saying no more than we say yes. That happens a lot of no's. And it stops positivity, because if that's all going on in your life, you notice that actually I'm being more negative than I've been before. I'm not normally this negative, but suddenly I just have lost my mojo, lost my spark, and I just can't be positive about anything. So that's the first thing that I notice that happens, that stop.
So just to say, what I'm hearing is you really just start holding yourself back, is what I'm hearing. This voice that you have in your head just amplifies, as you've described it, on steroids. And then you just say, it's so big that I'm going to hold myself back now from everything that's coming my way.
Yes.
You know, that's something that people would recognize in themselves. It sounds, yeah, you know, I definitely have experienced some imposter syndrome. But I think bringing it to life really makes a difference.
Yeah. And it's sometimes the little things, like I'm just not speaking in meetings anymore. And somebody says to you, I haven't heard from you for a while. And you think, gosh, why haven't I been speaking? Sometimes it's small things. And then you feel quite stuck. It's that when you're in that stuck, you imagine coming up to that stop sign and keep pushing against it, not really knowing what to do. You start catastrophizing. It's like, I can't change anything. I've got all these balls in the air. If I make one change, everything's going to fall apart. I hear that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're so critical of yourself and critical of others.
Wow.
And become very harsh on yourself as well.
And how do I decipher? How does someone decipher this is, you know, am I just having a bad day and I'm being a bit hard on myself? And if this is actually imposter syndrome?
Got it. I think it then moves on to the feelings that you're feeling. Number one is what actions are you not taking? Have a look at the actions that you're not taking. Are they more than, because we often don't do something that we plan to do that day. I wouldn't say that's imposter syndrome. If it's a consistent, you know, I'm basically paralyzed. I am not taking the actions consistently that I want to take, is one thing. And also it's the feeling. It's that feeling of being frustrated with yourself, being frustrated with others because you're not doing what you really want to do. Feeling low in confidence. You're not as confident as you used to be, that low self-esteem, and actually feeling exhausted, because when you're having this internal turmoil, if you like, and this voice constantly shouting at you, you get quite exhausted with it all. So it's those feelings that I think will sense some imposter syndrome there. And then the last bit is the impact on your behavior. How are you behaving? Are you being overcritical of yourself and others? Are you overthinking? Are you overworking? Because often with imposter syndrome, we actually overwork. You know I've named my inner critic Zelda. And when she's on fire, I tend to not doing anything. And Zelda really does love teaming up with my perfectionist. There's a real party going on between Zelda and my perfectionist, which means I find myself over-preparing, overworking, and just actually not getting stuff done. Because I'm in this cycle of overdoing everything, never happy about it because it's always from a place of fear. And I get quite exhausted. And I remember being in a meeting, my review meeting, because often another sign of imposter syndrome is that everyone around you is telling you how great you are. You're getting more work, you're getting more stuff. Everybody thinks you're absolutely flying. And then suddenly you're in that review meeting that I was in, and my boss said to me, Sadia, the only thing standing in your way is you.
Yes. Yeah.
And at the time when I was in it, I couldn't understand it. It's like, but of course I had all these feelings going on for me on the inside where I felt stuck and not doing things. But to the external world, I was flying. There's that real mismatch with imposter syndrome.
Thank you. I'm sure that resonates with lots of people listening, that sense of, gosh, I'm super successful, everything's going right, but inside, oh my goodness, you know, I can't cope, or something's going to fall and it's all going to be revealed that I'm a bit of a fraud. Yeah, and those patterns of holding ourselves back as well. I really recognize it so many times when I've spoken to clients where they say, you know, I was offered this opportunity 10 years ago and I said I wasn't ready. But it wasn't, I wasn't ready. It was that imposter. It was, you know, it was Zelda on steroids at that point, and that was getting in the way. So thank you so much, Sadia, for kicking us off and getting us thinking about what this actually looks like. And I hope later on, actually, we'll go into a little bit of your solutions as well. We'll go into your solutions, because I've been part of sessions that you've delivered where you talked about how we overcome this, and I love your strategies as well. But we'll go on to Aishwarya. Your work specifically is with women in male-dominated industries, and you've developed something called the Confidence Dynamic Framework. I love what you say on your website about not learning to play by the rules of the game, but having the confidence to make up your own game, which that's bold. I love it. Can you unpack that for us a little bit. When someone's drowning in imposter syndrome, and Sadia's illustrated it so beautifully, how does coaching help them stop playing by the rules that were never designed for them in the first place?
Thank you, Jenny. I want to go back to what someone experiences. I think Sadia elaborated a little bit on it, but also some things that you might be experiencing is that you don't feel like you belong in the room, that you don't have a place there, you don't know the rules. And this is also very common in majority male industries, because there's quite often not enough mentors, there's not enough role models, there's no blueprint for what you need to do to succeed. You can see people who have been successful, possibly from a different gender, but you don't have the rules. And it's why I say playing your game is because I think this was in response to the things that I found my coaches bringing to the table, where they wanted to know how they should be. When they received a promotion, they were more concerned about showing up as that. For example, if you're a project manager or product manager in your new role, they want to show up as a project manager, product manager on day one, even though their managers possibly saw a potential for them to grow into the role rather than from being perfect from day one. So make up your own game rather than trying to know what rules and how to navigate that landscape, because I also think we have the benefit of not having that blueprint. We can bring ourselves to, we can bring what we can bring to the table and focus on that rather than try to play the game by the rules that someone else has played by. So I think we can bring that benefit as women working in majority male industries. And another thing, focusing on what you don't know is taking away from what you do know, what you can offer to the conversation, to the team, to the project, to the industry, maybe. That's why I always shift that. But of course, as a coachee, I've been a coachee. I know it's not easy to go from a place where you are feeling less than to feeling confident. And that's a process I help them go through.
Thank you. I love that point, that reframe. If I focus on what I don't have, I'm taking away from what I do. Yeah. And also robbing potentially the organization of being able to truly experience that and make the most of it.
If I may just add one more thing, and I'm imagining everyone who shows up to this conversation is also cares about the impact on the industry and what they can contribute in that respect. So even from an impact perspective, you're holding back, you're not speaking up, as Sadia mentioned in meetings, is, you're robbing someone else of the opportunity of hearing you speak up, and the team of hearing what you can bring, your flavor that you can contribute to the project or the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think it most shows up in situations where, those high stakes situations like starting a new job, for example? Do you think that's mostly when we experience that it hits hardest?
No, I would say you experience it constantly. Possibly when the stakes are higher, you feel it more intensely. And I can think that's when, the voices get louder and louder. And because there's a scarcity mindset. You have to do this, because if you don't, you might lose out. But I think it's a constant thing. And so they also refer to it as a constant voice. You can experience it in various degrees. When it's a smaller voice, you can do things to overcome it, and you can, bypass it in some ways. But when the stakes are higher, you feel less powerful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And absolutely. So I'm just looking at the chat a little bit. Is this an unconscious, phenomenon? And just drawing on the initial research by Rose Clance and Imes. So it was Clance and Imes who initially talked about this imposter syndrome, and they found it in high achieving women. And a lot of research has been done since then. They absolutely talked about it as something that was unconscious. So agreeing with you there. We don't always know it, first of all, and it's about bringing it to our consciousness to be able to do something about it. Also, just want to do a couple of shout outs. Hi, Lorraine from Essex. Someone's in Rotterdam. I can't see your name, unfortunately, but hello to you. And thank you for all the interaction that I can see here about it being subconscious, about sometimes it being due to burnout and fatigue as well. So great that you're adding your points to the conversation. And the last bit here, people have told me to look and behave like someone else. And I can't be authentic me if I do that, and then can't play to my strengths. This is why playing by your own rules is really important. I appreciate that it can feel very shaky territory too. So advocating your response there, Ashwa. Lovely. Now to Tara, I'm going to bring you into the conversation. Now, you bring the fascinating combination of voice coaching, performance background, NLP, and somatic coaching. I'm really curious, when imposter syndrome is running the show, what do you notice happening physically? How does it show up in someone's voice, in their presence, and how they hold themselves?
I think this is such an important question, because when imposter syndrome really starts running the show, it's not just mental. And this is probably what will leave people with the most sort of prolific memory of, oh no, that went wrong, is the feeling, because it's deeply physical. The body will often react as if it's under threat. And so some of the common things that show up is it's going to activate our stress response, and our nervous system therefore shift, and we will shift into the fight or flight or freeze, which will have a few different possibilities. Typically, when I work with my clients and we go maybe through something they've got to deliver, some public speaking or a keynote, the sort of things that might happen is a tight chest. So the breathing immediately becomes more shallow, knots in the stomach, tension in the shoulders, which then translates to the jaw and the neck, a racing heart, sweaty palms. What else do you get? Feeling hot or getting flushed, or the restless fidgeting. So any props in our hands, you know, when somebody gets stuck with a marker and then they're clicking that marker or the pen, and that becomes this sort of indicator of their stress. And you're thinking, please put that pen down, or the piece of paper with the notes that's shaking as an appendage on the end of the hand. We want to put that down, don't we? And then the sudden fatigue that comes after performing. Okay, so sometimes after performing, you feel great. You soar, you're feeling great adrenaline. But if you've been in that fight, flight, or freeze state, you just feel drained and exhausted. And so, you know, that sense of bracing, like your body is preparing to be exposed as an imposter, is what's happening there. And I think in the voice, things that we might notice is speaking faster than usual because you're trying to get through it, which stops you from connecting with your message, or speaking really quietly, trailing off at the end of sentences. Sometimes the voice tightens or becomes high pitched. You can get a lot of over explaining, you know, a lot of, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Because we're trying to drive connection, but it's perhaps you're getting a bit of a loop. You don't feel like you're connected and in the moment. Nervous laughter, hesitating before stating an opinion. No, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do value people who process thoughts as well. Or turning statements into questions unintentionally. You know, turning statements into questions unintentionally. You know, that rising inflection that we can do, which is looking for some reassurance. But too much of that starts to communicate something. So you can get quite a lot of subtle apology woven into the tone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
there's something else I've seen. Sometimes people disconnecting. You can hear the words, but it's like soulless. They're just speaking. You know, that sort of they could be saying anything because they're just it's like almost protecting themselves, and so the words come out, but it's not like a human being delivered them as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, you know, I'm thinking about you know, Zelda turning up and thinking I must communicate the message, and we're not thinking about the human. And actually, we know we connect with people. I want to know your story. I want to get to know you and feel that's going to take people alongside you.
Yeah. So what can we do? How can we walk into a room where we know that the imposter voice is going to show up? What's the one thing I can do physically to help me shift that state?
Yes. Now, I like the fact in your question, Jen, you said we know the imposter is going to show up. So if we call it the imposter or the nerves, we know that regardless, I'm going to feel a bit of nervous energy. And that knowing, going, okay, this is what I do before I speak. And that doesn't mean it's going to go badly. This is what I do. This is how I feel sometimes. Then, now, depending on where you are, I'm going to give two examples. One, if you've got time before you walk into the room and you're in the bathroom and you're able to do what's called power posing, you can just open up your body and expand to take up as much space as possible. That impacts your breathing, your voice, your physicality, all that nervous energy. So if you have the luxury of a private space to really expand yourself, and picture Usain Bolt on the finish line, expanding your body, that chest opening, primitive movement really supports a can-do attitude. If you don't have the luxury of time, bear with me, if you don't have that, then simply what you want to do is just roll the shoulders back and create space here and on your throat, because that says you can trust me and I'm not trying to hide something. A little bit of space here, and open the sternum, because as soon as your chest comes out, that means your lungs expand, so you haven't got that shallow breath, and you've just altered your physiology, and you've said to your body, oh, I can do this. So instead of going head talk to body, you're going body talk to head. Body remind my head I can do this.
Yeah. Love that. And actually, you're talking about that, but it can be in this day and age, it can be in, an online call, an important online meeting or whatever it is. And these are things you can, Sadia and I just did it, didn't we? As we sat here, you can just do that just quickly before the call, or turn your camera off for a minute and do that. I'm sure that was just my feeling of being an imposter. Yeah. So I love all of that. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Really great. Okay, so we're going on to the final question that I want to ask you. So please, those who are listening, watching, please do add your questions into the chat. So one of the things that we promised about today is building your own evidence file, reminding yourself of what you've actually achieved. It sounds simple, but most of us don't do it. We just sort of achieved, tick, move on, and we don't really keep track. I'm curious how each of you helps your clients with this, and whether there are any creative approaches beyond the usual write down your wins advice. So I'm going to start with you, Aishwarya.
Thank you. For anyone listening, this is something that I think all coaches, I can agree with all the other coaches in the room that we all do this for our clients, but something that I advise is to not discount the emotional intelligence, things that revolve around emotional intelligence and supporting somebody in getting through their challenges through the day, because that's important in leadership. We often focus on the things that have results, immediate visible results, but things like supporting somebody with their mindset or helping them, last minute with a deadline, those are things that make people feel seen and heard. And you don't estimate the value of how important this is as a leader to bring all of that to your skill set. So demonstrate it in your evidence file. And I also say, when you want to use that, I'll have this sort of let me just remind myself, I, you, we formula. So whenever you want to leverage that information, put it in a way that you talk about what you did, how it benefited the other person listening, and then how this benefited the greater good of the team or the organization. So use that formula whenever you want to present what you have in your evidence file. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, because I think that's what we do too often. We underestimate what we do. We don't think about its impact on others, and we just think everyone does that, don't they? And then so we don't own it. And I think that formula is really helpful to do that.
Thank you. And I just want to add, especially, I'm speaking specifically to women in majority male industries, they say I think this is general, that a lot of people leave because of their managers. But if you're demonstrating that you are somebody who is building relationships and is good at that, that's something to really pay attention to, as Jenny mentioned.
And especially in a technological world where we're sort of giving everything to AI, actually, it can't build relationships. This is a very human skill that we can really double down on. So yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to go to you next, Tara.
So I love this question because the area of I'm a psychologist, but it's very specifically a positive psychologist. So strengths-based work is at the heart of everything I do. One of the things that I would probably do quite early on with the client is get them to interact with the VIA strengths sort of. It's like a survey. So you put in all of your experiences. It's free, it's online. I'm not affiliated with them, but and it will give you information of your top 5 strengths. And already you feel better about yourself just when you read them. You read those top 5 and what they mean, and you're like, do you know what? I'm a pretty cool person when I look at that. I'm a pretty interesting, I'm really smart. And then I would usually take that and do a strengths intervention. So take one of those top 5 strengths. Anyone can try this. You take one of the top 5 strengths and you put it at the forefront of all of your actions for 5 to 7 days. And you really focus on it. So if you have a strength of love or love of learning or humor, you just go, well, every time I meet a challenge or something that I want to really enjoy, or I want to work towards a goal, I'm going to put that strength at the forefront every day and really bring it to the fore in all of my actions. And that will just galvanize this understanding of who you are at your best. Just as you said, not skills that you take for granted. Doesn't everyone do that? But actually look at what is special about me at my best and how it makes me feel about my quality of life, my relationships, and indeed our work.
Amazing. Love that. Love that. It's just so positive. Thank you. Some real practical tools are being shared with you here. And the VIA Strengths Finder, it's called. If you type that into Google, you'll find it really easily, Shoku. And great to see you, Shoku. It's been a really long time. I hope you're doing well. So glad you're here with us. So Sadia, the same question to you in terms of building your evidence file, or you might want to talk about your inner critic versus your inner cheerleader, whatever works for you, or both.
Thank you. I love the evidence file. I think it's good to have one. I often find that people only touch their evidence file when it's review time. So it's not something that they necessarily, I'd love them to do it every day, and etc. But I love everyday practices. So the practices that I love to see is, well, not just at work. I think this is holistic, so it impacts us at home as well. I have children, and actually it's really lovely. I think there's a little background noise. It might be Tara, I'm sure. Is it not? So I think it's really lovely when you're sitting around the dinner table with your family, whoever that might be, children or not, is talk about 3 good things from the day. We talk about 3 good things a day. We bring the good things that happen into our daily life. So I think that's a nice way to do it. In team meetings, I loved what Aishwarya was saying. It's about this softer skills as well. It's not just about the achievements. Why don't we talk about that in team meetings more? And also call it out for others in your team, because sometimes we're not so good about calling it out about ourselves. When you start calling it out for other team members of how great they were about whatever they were doing, and the kindness, the compassionate, what they did to make you open up. When we start talking about those things in team meetings, it changes the whole dynamic, and we get used to talking about it about other people, and then actually it's easier to talk about it about ourselves. And the big thing that I do is actually ask about the inner champion. We have this inner critic. I have Zelda. She's pretty strong at times, but I have a very different relationship with her now. She doesn't drive the car anymore. I'm still driving the car. She used to drive the car for a long time, but now she's very much in the back seat. And in the front seat with me is very much my inner champion. So I talk to my inner champion. It's kind of, well, what have you got to say? Because my inner champion has been with me from day one as well. Sometimes it's hard for me to say, well, you're great at this, Sadia. But actually, when I speak to my inner champion, her whole point is to champion me. So she comes up with a lot more stuff than I would naturally think about. So having that relationship with your inner champion, who I talk to daily, I journal, I'm a journaler, I love journaling every morning, just 10 minutes, but I love writing down all my thoughts. Usually it's Zelda who talks a lot in the morning. She tells, you've got this on your to-do list, you've got to do this, you've got to have done that, you haven't prepared for this, you haven't done that. She has her say, and I let her have her say every morning. I write it out, and then I say to my inner champion, what do you have to say?
Brilliant.
And she very often just says, you've got this.
Ah, fantastic. Fantastic. I love the 3 things that went well with the family. And I love that particularly because you're developing those skills and qualities in the next generation. So hopefully they're not going to have so much imposter syndrome, or they'll be able to hear more of their inner champion. So you're helping yourself, but you're also helping another generation of people not have the same experience. And of course love the inner champion as well. So some really great strong strategies from all 3 of you in terms of imposter syndrome. And we've got just a message here from Jay saying, I used to feel embarrassed by my achievements until someone asked me to think of this differently. What outcome did you deliver? What I found is that talking about outcomes was easier than talking from I did this. So I guess you move eventually into I did this, but because it is important, I think, to be able to say in an interview situation or in life, I achieved something. But yeah, if the way in is through outcomes, I think that is a really good tip. I guess if someone comes to you and says, I'm having a lot of self-doubt at work at the moment. I'm working, double the hours because I just don't want to get found out. And I'm the only person like me here. That might be a woman in a male-dominated environment, might be a person from ethnically diverse background in an environment where they are one of the few people, might be someone who's neurodivergent with a group of neurotypical people. And they're describing some of these things. They're describing, working really hard. On paper, they send you their CV and it's like, wow, you're amazing. But they're saying, I don't feel up to it. Where do you start, I guess, with that coaching process? Is it just about having a chemistry call and unpacking what it means for them? Do you use any tools? Do you design a sort of series of coaching? Are you more organic than that? I'd just love to hear your perspectives.
I can go. My own process is much more organic, I would say. I don't use tools. I think when we start a coaching relationship, yes, we discuss all of these things top level in the coaching chemistry conversation, but then it takes a while for us to go deeper. And usually I notice I think between the 3rd and 5th session, maybe a month after we've been working together, that we can do the deeper stuff. To give you an example, I coached a woman who had just got a job as a group HR manager for a pub group, and this was her dream job. She was based in Newcastle at the time, and she was daunted by the prospect of it, even though she'd been waiting for this all her life. And then when we were able to dig deeper, we uncovered that one of her colleagues, close associates who had worked with her for a couple of years in a couple of restaurants, he had, I think, playfully suggested that she was responsible. She was a curse to all the places that she worked at because they ended up closing. And that idea of a curse was at the bottom of her mind. And she had never shared it with anyone because there's a lot of shame associated with that. But it took digging a little bit deeper, creating that safe space where we could go to that level of depth and explore and, help us see that one assistant manager cannot be responsible for the financial success of a restaurant that she works at, and she was just unlucky where she went. It's not her responsibility to ensure the success. She's part of it. But so my point is, I think creating that space where the coachee feels safe to go deeper as well, rather than rushing them to fix the problem immediately. And sometimes coachees might not be able to go to that level. They might want to stay at more surface level support, and that might be valuable for them at this moment. And maybe they come back to you later in a year's time when they still encounter more challenges with imposter syndrome and they want a deeper solution.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, Sadia?
Yeah, I completely agree. And just building on Aishwarya's, that safe in a coaching session, what I love about being a coach and creating this, but also as a coachee, what I love the most is that safe space. As Aishwarya said, it's like no other space. There's no judgment. And actually, the first thing I always say is, how human of you. There's nothing broken. There's nothing to be fixed. It's just very, very, very human, and shows that they care. There's a massive, they are high achieving women or high achieving people who care deeply. That's the starting point. Nothing to be fixed. And when you have that self-doubt and that feeling of self-doubt, understand where it comes from. But a lot of the coaching I will also often do, and like I've done this with you, Jenny, is just a guided meditation on really understanding that relationship with your inner critic, but also understanding that Zelda or your inner critic is separate from you. So that harshness and those harsh voices aren't you. It's not Sadir. Sadir actually is really kind and loving and caring. It doesn't say all those harsh things. It's Zelda that does that. So being able to separate from Zelda and having Zelda, she's always with me, not hating her, but having a very different relationship with her, just creates a different space for Sadir to speak. For me to come up with, even though there's that feeling of self-doubt, even if those feelings of hardness, those challenges that we have, and that Zelda grabs hold of and tells you there's nothing you can do, it's the worst thing in the world, that's it, it's over. At least I can, with coaching, I help Sadir to get back into the driving seat and create a new space for Sadir to think, okay, well, if the self-doubt wasn't there, what's one thing that you could do today that's going to help you? What is it actually that Sadir wants to do today? There's always a big thing like a promotion we want, but what's one thing that we can do that's going to help you today, help you to be more positive, help you on that journey? Because you're not going to do anything that gets that end result with one action. It's going to be lots of actions. So let's come back to what we really want to get out of things. What does Sadir want to get out of stuff? And what's one step that Sadir can take? So that breaking it down and separating Zelda from Sadir, I find can be quite powerful.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Tara, do you want to add to this?
I'd love to add to this. Thank you, Jenny. I think I've had a really lovely opportunity to bring a number of my skills and professions together when I'm coaching particularly women I've worked with on imposter syndrome. And I never approach it as a sort of toolkit. To start with, I have to, even though there are so many similarities, obviously I've just spoken of the typical things you might see, it's been key and integral to the success that clients have is that it's their individual story and journey. And I'm here for that. And actually the somatic side of my coaching means their body will tell me what their individual story is. It just will communicate where the block is, where the fight is, where the light and excitement is. These things will just be communicated, and they're the nuggets, the moments that we can capitalize on, where I can say, I noticed that, do you realize? You show me. And again, a bit like with the strengths, people feel seen. Clients go, oh, you see me. Brilliant. And that builds these bridges where we can have such wonderful connection. So then, yeah, of course, the voice coach in me and the drama, trained drama practitioner in me will then be able to support a very bespoke set of tips to help them hold that meeting or deliver that speech with the confidence that they need.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So hearing your unique approaches, it's organic, but it also draws on all of your knowledge and experience and and very bespoke to the individual's needs. I think one thing that I think is quite important in this process of overcoming your imposter syndrome is finding ways to dispute the voices. And I think sometimes you have to become really aware of them first. So, become aware, finding if whether it's through journaling, as Sadia said, or other ways to kind of hear what you're speaking to yourself on a daily basis, because we all have the voices in our head, and the voice in your head now that's saying no you don't is the voice in your head. So we all have it, and ultimately we have to become clearer about what it's saying. And then I think find ways to say, is that true? Yeah, I can't public speak, for example. Oh, so when you spoke at that event, what were you doing? Oh, I did public speak. I have to stop telling myself I can't, because I have. And that disrupting, I think, retraining your brain to think in new ways, I think is quite an important element of overcoming that imposter syndrome. And it starts with awareness and then moves into action. And I think a bit of disruption, but in a really positive way. Those new pathways, those new neural pathways of learning. You want to say something?
Also, yes. Also, sometimes you might not be able to do those things, and you might have to lean into the belief that your manager has in you more than you have for yourself at the moment. And then, it becomes safer to dissociate from those voices. And I've also experienced where myself, sometimes taking action, just doing the thing, leaves, your focus on the voices is less. So, yeah, I've had mixed experiences with dealing with the voice. But I think it's important. You've asked an important question, because it's good to normalize. These are the experiences that we have. It's not so easy to shut them down as we would like to.
Absolutely. But I love that reminder that confidence comes from action. You can't sit waiting for confidence. You have to act for the confidence to come. And I think that's a really helpful reminder, Aishwarya. So we've got a question here. In your experience, how much of imposter syndrome is individual psychology, and how much is created by the culture or system someone is operating in? This is a question from Jay. Who wants to start? Is that you, Tara?
I'm happy to start with this. Jay, a lot of my work is on shifting cultures. So I have lots of public services, and I'm regularly asked to support on culture shift. And I've noticed that actually there can be this sort of heady combination of what you've mentioned, individual psychology, the culture or the system, and so much more. Intergenerational conflict, value systems conflict, physiology, different stages in life in terms of hormones. One day I was absolutely fine, I didn't have imposter syndrome. The next day I did, and it just seemed to happen overnight. There are so many things. And so unpacking that, when you're in a toxic culture that doesn't support value, that doesn't allow you to contribute, then of course that is going to impact many people, not everyone, many people's ability to feel seen and heard, and their voice have a positive impact, and may contribute to some imposter syndrome. But for some of us, it can be either a lifelong journey, or it can just come up when something in our life changes. We decide to have a family and then get back into work. We are a different person then. And how do you step back into that space and still know your worth? So yes, and potentially, my answer is yes, Jay, and potentially a whole lot more can contribute to somebody's imposter syndrome.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add anything on that? Yes, dear.
Often when you coach around imposter syndrome, it's as Aishwarya was saying, and Tara, you unpick and you talk about lots of things that may have happened in the past. I don't like to speak in meetings because this happened in the past, etc. There's something that you're holding on to that keeps coming up. It's like a trigger in your body, as Tara said. It stays in your body, even though in your mind you said, well, that was rubbish, but it stays in your body, so it comes up again. And I do find, Jay's question, created by the cultural system someone is operating in, Zelda remembers everything. So she remembers being in that meeting with that not so nice person. I think when they worked there, they didn't speak to me in a nice way. And was it because of me? Was it because of the color of my skin? What was the reason? Zelda remembers all those different things, and she keeps it and throws it at me all the time. So I think sometimes in your journeys, if you've had more things for Zelda to grab hold of, and throw at you, imposter syndrome can feel bigger. And sometimes when you've worked in organizations where the culture hasn't necessarily been that great at different times for different reasons, it can be carried. And I think the inner critic and Zelda can carry a lot as you go along. So I think they can both work together.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Ashwarya.
May I also add something very interesting in Jay's question is where the two intersect as well. How many times we have gone into a meeting room intending to ask our managers for something, and then we modulate our behavior because sometimes the tone of the room isn't right. No one's in a mood for a conversation about something that you want more responsibilities at work, or it might be something that you want to advocate for yourself in another area of your life. We modulate how we show up, especially if we're empathetic, if we don't have traditionally power in our lives and in our communities. We would tend to modulate how we show up and change our way of operating in a space.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm just adding my perspective. I think sometimes we are internalizing something that is external. I think sometimes, you get a reaction to you, or someone speaks over you, someone appropriates your idea, someone seems like they don't understand when you're talking, but they understand when everyone else is talking, for example. And these things you can think, is it me? And what am I doing wrong? When actually it might be them. So if there's a culture that makes you feel unwelcome or that you don't belong, I think it can contribute quite strongly to your sense of feeling like an imposter. And ultimately, it could be bias or bullying, but you don't always realize it at the time. And you can internalize it. So I think it's a really great question, because I think it's good for people to ask that question. And I've definitely had people come to me for coaching, to work on themselves. And through that, we've realized actually you need to pick yourself up and take yourself to a different environment, and you won't feel like that. So I think it's a good lens on this conversation. So the final question, again from Jay. Thank you so much, Jay, for these great questions. If imposter syndrome is often amplified by context, how should organizations think differently about supporting women in perimenopause, especially when they're senior or in visible roles? Does anyone have a thought on this? It's an interesting one, isn't it? This idea. Thank you, Sadia.
I think organisations should think differently about supporting women on the whole, and perimenopause is one of those things that does come up, and thankfully it's spoken about more than it has been in the past, which is great. And perimenopause often gets missed, but not only by organisations, by the women themselves. I missed my perimenopause. Looking back, I can spot it now loud and clear, but I missed it. So I think for me, it's about creating spaces. It's creating spaces for women to be with other women so they can talk about and hear other people talk about their experiences, about perimenopause, about Zeldas, about all these different things that we don't necessarily talk about in our day-to-day work. I think those spaces are really important because we learn and we think about things in a very different way. So I think organizations actually need to start creating more of those spaces to take us out of our day-to-day work, the conveyor belt of the stressful workloads that we have to do. And that's absolutely right, but take us away from that into a different space where we can think about ourselves as human beings. That's the important part, because when we have those spaces where we can think about ourselves as human beings, and not just mentally, as Tara says, but physically as well, because I think when we think of ourselves as human beings, it's all of it, not just mental, it's physical, and all the needs that are being asked about is the caring needs at home, all the different things that as human beings we have to live with. We need a space to be able to talk about that, because when we do, we will talk about what we need as a group with perimenopause and what we will need, and we'll be able to then ask our organizations, and the organizations can learn from us, and they can also give us what we need. So I'm thinking, for me, it's more about the spaces we're creating for humans to be human, which I think if we had those spaces, more of them, would actually work more efficiently, and it would pay off fivefold for organizations. So to me, it's about creating that space where perimenopause definitely come up.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring our conversation to a close, but it's been really rich and really, really enlightening, I think. I want to say a massive thank you to Aishwarya, Sadia and Tara. It was brilliant. And I hope everyone listening has at least one moment of, you know, that's what I've been going through, or that really resonates, or that's what my staff member or colleague or friend or sibling or whoever has been experiencing, because sometimes it's not us, sometimes it's others, and recognizing in others and supporting them through it is equally important. If you're interested in working with any of these coaches or exploring other coaches that we have in the Diverse Executive Coach Directory, please do go to the link that Tanya will be adding in the chat. As I've said, you know, they are amazing coaches. The directory is set up to connect coaches with people like yourselves, with organizations as well who want to diversify their coaching pool. And our coaches have global majority backgrounds. They're highly experienced and qualified coaches, so they're fantastic. Or feel free to get in touch with me directly as well. Our next How a Coach Can Help event is coming soon. So please do make sure you're subscribed to our Eventbrite channel. It will be happening next month. And we're really happy to share that with you. So we have one a month coming up. And it's how a coach can help me uncover the real reason I haven't been promoted yet. So that's the next one. How a coach can help me uncover the real reason I haven't been promoted yet. So it's going to be a good one, as always. And one last thing, your feedback genuinely shapes what we do next. So Tanya will put the feedback link in the chat. It takes literally 1 minute, and it really does help us make these sessions as useful as possible for you, and also inform the future sessions that we have. So please do complete it. So a final thank you to Aishwarya, Sadia and Tara. Thank you all for being here as well, for your brilliant questions, your thoughts, your reflections in the chat. Here's what I want you to take away from today. The voice telling you that you're not good enough, that you're about to be found out, it's lying, and you don't have to listen to it alone. Do engage a coach if you need support with quietening it, and take care, everyone. And we really look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for organising.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.